To set the stage for the audience who might not be as familiar with generative AI or LLMs, can you provide a quick overview in some of the trends that you're noticing collectively?
Yeah, I think we're at a really interesting moment for the industry and for users of technology and computers more generally. And the opportunity that we have here right now with LLMs and generative AI is that fundamentally the interactions that humans have with computers, with technology, can change in dramatic ways. So in the past, computers have been very prescriptive on how you, as a user, had to interact with them to get the results that you wanted, right? Now that can actually change with generative and AI and large language models to be a much more conversational experience. So you can start interacting with a system in natural language and still get the same results from the system. And that's a huge opportunity for us to make technology much more approachable for much wider audiences.
You know, Torsten, why are we seeing such a rapid increase in adoption, and what does this mean for the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think there are two reasons why we were seeing the interest and the adoption. The first one comes back to those conversational experiences that users now can have with computer technology. And that is very empowering because users can become so much more productive. So imagine that you are a developer and you write code to build an application. Now you can have a co-pilot that is driven by generative AI that helps you build the application, write the code, and can literally save you 90% of the time that it takes to get the product into market, right? So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that the understanding of data and the intelligence that we derive from data can become much more automated through generative AI. And that is something that we, from a Snowflake perspective, also are very excited about in the context of our Applica acquisition to automatically understand documents, to derive document intelligence in an automated way. And we're coincidentally using large language models and generative AI as part of Applica.
You know, I want to dive a little bit further into this. Thank you so much. It's great to have a baseline. How are you and the team at Snowflake integrating this technology collectively into the data cloud?
So I already mentioned Applica, where we are working with unstructured data documents in particular. We already support orchestrating with externally hosted large language models through a capability that we call external functions. And they essentially give you the ability to interact with a web-hosted LLM through an API. And you can send data from Snowflake over into that system through that external functions concept. And there's a number of Medium blog posts around that show you how you can do that. Now, having said this, our position always has been that we want to bring the compute to actually where the data sits inside Snowflake. And that's also true for large language models and generative AI. So we want to bring LLMs and generative AI into Snowflake security perimeter and governance perimeter, and more on that at our upcoming Summit conference.
An exciting next chapter here for Snowflake.
Absolutely, yes.
Torsten, thank you so much for that. As we are all aware, ChatGPT has opened the door to non-technical folks. How will LLMs impact both coders and non-technical consumers of enterprise data within an organization?
Yeah, I think it will be very empowering for both of these users. So first of all, for the non-technical users, it creates opportunities to have a much more conversational experience with a computer, with technology, with a system. So imagine that you're essentially walking up to a computer in the morning, and in natural language, you're explaining to the system what you want to achieve today. What problems do you want to solve? You engage in a conversation, you get a first answer from the system and say, hey, give me data for the following use case. You get a first result set, and you say, yeah, can you present that in a different shape? The system reacts, gives you the answer, right? And in the end, you might say, hey, show me a pie chart for this, or create me a Streamlit application. And that's where you then also transition into the coding space, the developer space, where coders will just become much more productive because they can describe in natural language what kind of code they want to build, and the system will give them an initial suggestion for the code, and that may save them 90% of the time that it usually takes them today to build an application. That will be transformational for all of us, I think.
An absolute game changer. Talk about saving time and being more impactful.
Exactly, right? And also, it will create additional insights into the data where we can automatically better understand data, derive intelligence from the data.
I want to look at society as a whole, if you don't mind, Torsten. What would you say to the viewers that are watching that might be nervous about the impact that generative AI and LLMs will have on their careers, and what should they and companies be doing now in order to be successful into the future?
It's a great question. So I think the first one is we should appreciate the benefits that we could get from generative AI and large language models to be more conversational and more productive when interacting with computers. So that's the first thing. The other one is just about making sure that when in an enterprise context we're working with sensitive data, that we're very clear on where we're sending sensitive data. So if there's an externally hosted LLM system, you might not necessarily be comfortable sending your most private sensitive data over into a place that you don't necessarily trust. So particularly enterprises in the context of sensitive data need to pay special attention to the terms and conditions of these systems that they're interacting with, just from a security and privacy perspective. Now, overall, more broadly, we should also be careful about what do we assume? Do we assume that these systems are always correct? And that is not necessarily true. So we should see them as accelerating our work, but we should not blindly trust them. So in many cases today, I would caution users and say, hey, look at the results. Is that what you expect? Does that make sense? And for many use cases, we should think about it like a human needs to be in the loop, because otherwise the results may not necessarily be trustworthy.
Well, I'm excited to see this topic continue to evolve. Torsten, from your perspective, you mentioned upcoming Snowflake Summit and blogs, but how can the audience learn more about everything that's happening from Snowflake's perspective in relation to generative AI and LLMs?
Yeah, we'll continue to communicate about that. So watch for blogs and start reading up on the content that we have out there, and also hope to see you all at Summit.
Torsten, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Always a pleasure having you on Data Cloud Now.
Thank you so much.
And for the audience watching, thank you for your interest in this topic and for tuning into DCN. I'm Ryan Green, and I'll see you in the next video.